The sun was sliding down behind the cracked hills when the poor farmer entered the village market, his footsteps slow and tired from a day that had earned him almost nothing. Dust clung to his clothes, and the smell of dry earth followed him like a shadow. In his pocket rested a single coin, warm from his palm, the last money he owned, after months of failed crops and empty hopes. He had planned to save it for his children, to buy a little grain so they could sleep without hunger gnawing at their stomachs. As he walked past the well, a soft sound stopped him, the quiet sound of someone crying, not loudly, but as if even tears had become too heavy to waste. Near the stone wall sat an Apache woman, her body wrapped in a worn, colorless shawl. Her hair was tangled by wind and dust, and her eyes, though sharp, carried a deep, aching sadness. People passed her without stopping. Some glanced away, others whispered, but no one knelt beside her. The farmer felt a pull in his chest, a feeling he could not explain, and before fear could stop him, he stepped closer. He asked her gently if she was hungry. At his words, her shoulders shook and tears streamed freely down her face. She looked at him with desperation and shook her head. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "don't spend money on me. That coin may be the only thing standing between your family and starvation. I have already lost everything. Let me carry my fate alone." Her words struck deeper than any insult. This was not a beggar demanding help. This was a woman protecting a stranger from suffering. The farmer opened his palm and stared at the coin. He thought of his children waiting at home, of the long road back, of the hunger that would return tonight. His heart argued with his mind, fear wrestling with compassion. Around them the market noise faded, leaving only the sound of her quiet sobs and his own breathing. Slowly, he closed his fingers around the coin, then relaxed his hand. A calm settled over him, heavy but peaceful. He met her eyes and smiled, not a smile of wealth but of choice. In that moment, he understood that keeping the coin might save his body, but giving it away might save his soul. Without another word, he turned toward the bread seller, carrying with him a decision that would change both their lives forever. The farmer returned from the bread stall with a small, warm loaf cradled in both hands, as if it were something fragile and alive. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the air, drawing the attention of the Apache woman. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and she pushed herself back slightly, as though the food itself frightened her. "Why would you do this?" she cried, her voice rising and breaking. "I told you not to waste your last coin on me." Her tears fell faster now, and she covered her face in shame, unable to understand why a stranger would choose her hunger over his own. The farmer knelt beside her on the dusty ground and gently placed the loaf between them. He broke it slowly, the soft sound echoing in the silence that had formed around them. "Because hunger does not ask who deserves it," he said quietly, "and because pain grows heavier when it is carried alone." He offered her the larger piece, though she tried to refuse it again. Her hands trembled as she finally accepted, as if this simple act of kindness had shattered a wall she had built around herself. As she ate, her tears fell onto the bread, mixing with crumbs and dust. Between small bites she began to speak, her voice low and uneven, as though each word cost her strength. She told him of a life that once held honor and belonging. She had been born into the Apache people, raised with stories of courage, land, and ancestors who walked proudly beneath open skies. War had come without mercy, scattering her tribe like ash in the wind. Fire had swallowed her home, and the faces she loved most had vanished into silence. She had wandered for months, surviving on little more than endurance and memory. "I did not beg today for food," she admitted, staring at the ground. "I begged so that I would not become a burden. I wanted to fade away without taking from someone who still had a reason to live." Her words were heavy with exhaustion, the kind that comes not from travel, but from losing hope again and again. The farmer listened without interrupting, his heart tightening with every sentence. He felt the ache of her loss as if it were his own, realizing that suffering wore many faces, not all of them poor or visible. When the bread was gone, he stood up slowly, his stomach empty but his spirit strangely full. He had no coin, no food, and no clear plan for tomorrow. Yet as he walked away into the cooling evening, he felt a quiet peace settle over him. Above the dry land, dark clouds gathered, and the first distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, promising a change neither of them yet understood. The rain came softly at first, then with steady determination, soaking the dry fields and washing the dust from the roads. For the farmer, it felt like a blessing whispered rather than shouted. Days passed, and green shoots began to push through the soil where nothing had lived before. Though his body remained tired, and his supplies were still scarce, hope returned with every drop of water that fell from the sky. He worked his land from dawn until nightfall, believing that something unseen had shifted the moment he gave away his last coin. One morning, he returned to the village market to trade what little he had and to ask about seed. The place was louder than usual, filled with voices and movement. Near the well, a familiar figure caught his eye. The Apache woman stood there again, but she was no longer bowed beneath rags and despair. Her posture was strong, her clothes clean, and her eyes clear and steady. Behind her stood several elders and traders, their presence calm yet commanding. For a moment, the farmer wondered if his hunger and exhaustion were playing tricks on him. She saw him and stepped forward, emotion flickering across her face. Before he could speak, she lowered her head in respect. "You gave when you had nothing," she said, her voice firm but filled with warmth. "You saw a woman asking you not to help her, and still you chose kindness." The crowd quieted as she spoke, and the farmer felt every eye turn toward him. She explained that she was the last living heir of her people's leadership, separated from her tribe during the chaos of war. Those who stood behind her had been searching across regions, following rumors and traces, never giving up hope of finding her alive. The day she sat near the well had been her last moment of strength. If not for the bread and compassion of a stranger, she would not have survived long enough to be found. The elders stepped forward, offering the farmer gold, land, and protection. Their voices promised comfort and security beyond anything he had known. The farmer listened, humbled and overwhelmed. Yet something within him remained unchanged. After a long silence, he shook his head gently. "I did not help for reward," he said. "I only did what felt human." He asked for just one thing, that kindness be extended to others as freely as it had been given to her. The woman smiled, understanding completely. From that day on, the farmer's fields flourished, not only with crops, but with a reputation rooted in compassion. And long after the rain clouds passed, the story of a single coin given away in poverty lived on, reminding generations that true wealth is measured by what we are willing to give when we have the least.